Hi, I'm Helene Kiser, your writing Sherpa and founder of the Butterfly Blueprint. And these are my 5 things that you need to heal after a dramatic loss or life change. Number 1, you need time. Allow yourself that time. You are not on anyone's timeline, but your timeline. The stages of grief don't move from denial to anger to bargaining to depression to acceptance, all in a nice linear line, after which you're done and you're not grieving anymore. We don't graduate from depression in order to earn acceptance. It's not how it works. It's all cyclical, and it will go on your whole life, and that's okay. It doesn't matter where you are on the continuum, because it is a continuum. Think of it like a Mobius strip rather than a linear line. And what you need is the time to allow yourself to feel all the feels. Whatever place you're in, it's an okay place to be. Surround yourself by people who understand that. And understand too that not everyone is going to understand that. And that's okay too. I certainly didn't understand what it was like until it became my life. And now I understand it all too well. Go ahead and take the time that you need, whatever that looks like. And it's not about I'm going to take 2 months off and go live in the mountains somewhere. It's more like giving yourself permission. If you're at a dinner party, for example, and something triggers you, feel free to go ahead and step away from that dinner party. It's okay. It's your life, and you need to give yourself what you need. And usually that really is just time, whether it's a few minutes or it's a few hours or it's a few weeks. It's the time that matters. You wouldn't want to get over your loved one like, I can't snap, but if you could snap, in a snap, would you? Of course not. So if it takes a while, that's all right. I believe it's going to take my lifetime, and I'm allowing myself that time, because there's never going to be a day where I don't miss him. And that's a good thing. Number 2, you need support. And I don't know what that support looks like for you, but you do. You know who the people in your life are and who they aren't. But you need to find support to help you get through, especially the worst of it, right up front. The first year, the first 2 years are crucial for being able to heal to a degree that you can live the way that you lived before. When my husband died, I attended 2 separate support groups, and people who know me know support groups are definitely not my thing. I am an intensely private person, and the whole idea of everybody holding hands and singing Kumbaya is just not my jam. No shade to people whose jam that is, but it doesn't spread on my toast, right? But I went because I didn't know what else to do, and I got value from both groups. There was something about being in a group of people who, though they did not share my specific loss, of course, had loss to share, because there is language of loss that only those of us who join this club no one ever wants to be part of can speak. And being in rooms of people who were going through their own times of loss and struggling through that and wanting to remember their people was really edifying for me. It made me feel not so alone. Even though my story was not theirs and their story was not mine, it didn't matter. They had this shared loss, and being in that room was very helpful. Maybe support groups are not something you're going to do, whether that's in person or online, that's okay. Find your support where you have it. And please Tell people what you need. Nobody's a mind reader, and the people who love you genuinely want to help. It's why you will hear over and over again, tell me what I can do, because they don't know what to do either. So if you know what you need, tell them. They will be grateful that you say, I just want you to sit here while I scream for 10 minutes. Or if you say, I really just want to go through this photo album, would you go through this with me? Or could we just not talk? Whatever it is, tell people. Give the people who are trying to help you a little bit of grace too, and recognize that they're doing their best too, just like you did with people in your life before the loss became yours. My third piece of advice may surprise you because it goes against the grain of what is often recommended, which is don't make any major life changes after a loss like this. I was in a situation where I had no choice but to make major life changes. I was forced to move. I had to pack up everything and go somewhere else. I had to change jobs. There were all kinds of things that I had no choice but to do. And I wouldn't have done them. All I wanted to do was just crawl in bed and pull the covers over my head and say, wake me up when it's over, which of course it isn't ever going to be over. So I made these major life changes, and I rearranged my finances to be more in line for taking care of myself as a newly single woman, and so on and so forth. And while I would never have chosen any of those changes, they all turned out to be good changes for me. So the experts are right that you shouldn't just chuck everything to the wind necessarily, but feel free to make changes. Your life is different now. Nothing is ever going to be the same again. That's true. But it doesn't have to be a prison sentence, right? Sometimes change really is good, just like Arby's says. Embrace change. Make change to the extent that you are able and willing that isn't irreversible change, right? And see what your new life looks like in this time. Feel free to explore some different avenues of things that you wouldn't have imagined before. My fourth piece of advice is to be intentional about looking for joy. Joy is not a synonym for happy, but it is an antonym to despair. We look for joy because even in the worst of life, and life gives all of us such terrible experiences we wouldn't have wanted for any money in the world. But to find joy in the midst of that is our human blessing that nothing else on earth shares. Be intentional about it. Look for it. Even if at first all you can do is brew yourself a really nice cup of coffee, and you tell yourself, oh, this is my cup of coffee and it's perfect and it's in my favorite mug that I love because it fits my hands so nicely, and I'm going to carry it over to my favorite chair, and I'm going to look out the window and I'm going to enjoy the birds. And then you do that, and shockingly, you will probably find in those moments that you've given yourself just a little bit of joy. And I urge you to look for those moments of joy. And the more you look for them, the more you are intentionally looking for them, the more you will find, the more they will come to you. This isn't about getting over it. I will never get over my loss. You very possibly will never get over your loss or your life change. You don't have to get over it to still find joy in your life, but you have to find it and recognize it and acknowledge it and name it, and then it will not be the last moment of joy you will find. You will find others. They will come to you. They will come to you. My fifth piece of advice is to always be reminding yourself that this too shall pass. You will feel regret. You will feel sadness. You will feel anger at what you can't control. That's normal. That's expected. If you don't feel that, then you're not human. Think of it like you're sitting on a rock in the middle of a river, not a whitewater river, a stream. Let's make it a stream. You're sitting on your rock in your stream and the water's going by. And when the regrets come to you and the ways in which perhaps you failed legitimately come to you, imagine yourself picking up a leaf that's floating by and writing that regret on the leaf and then set it in the water and let it go. There are ways in which I feel I was not a good wife. I actually was a very good wife. But of course, I'm human and I make mistakes, and there are arguments that we had or things that I didn't understand at the time that I do now, or at least feel softer about. And I could beat myself up with that, and I did indulge in that at the beginning, but it just doesn't matter. We loved each other. He knew that I loved him. In all the ways that I failed, he also failed. We are flawed human beings who chose to love each other. And the fact that he's gone now doesn't mean that any of it was my fault or that there was anything actually wrong in what I did. But we have a tendency to find the negative in ourselves rather than the positive. It's like the old interview questions, tell me 3 things that are your weaknesses are much easier questions to answer for me than it is to say, what are 3 positives, right? We're not used to thinking of ourselves as legitimate, worthwhile, flawed, but perfect in our own way human beings. And I'm telling you, you must remember that it passes. It's all going to pass. Nothing is permanent. That's not a fatalistic view. It's a view that gives you peace and acceptance, and you can find what your soul, or whatever you want to call it, is looking for as you go through your big loss or your grief or whatever life-changing event you have. If you simply say, well, this too shall pass.